on this Wednesday. We are talking today about setting and achieving our goals. It kind of ties on a little bit from our last month's session, which was more focused around, the different areas of your business that you can be working on. This one is maybe a little bit more about, from the personal perspective in terms of how do we set really good goals, and then how do we kind of manage or tackle those obstacles that often get in the way of achieving those goals. I just out of curiosity, we're kind of mid-February now. Did anyone set any New Year's resolutions? Maybe just pop a Y into the chat if you did, and an N if you didn't. So Y for yes, I set a resolution, and N for no, I didn't set any resolutions. Okay, so a few people saying no, that they hadn't. I think, people are kind of mixed on, the value of them. A good few people are saying that they haven't, a couple of people saying they have. And well, I suppose the reason I ask, we're talking about goals and resolutions, and some research out there would suggest that by February, up to 80% of people who set New Year's resolutions have kind of forgotten about them by February. There's only about, again, some research, some estimates which suggest only about 8% of people stick with their resolutions for the entire year. And I can completely understand why, some people set resolutions at the very start of the year. It's kind of a new beginning. But I think that January, it's a bit of a kind of dark and depressing time. I don't think it's the best time to be trying to take on new goals. I think maybe February might be a better time. We're kind of coming into, it's getting a bit brighter. It's kind of that, springtime, new beginnings, all of that. So I think it can be a good time to either set some new goals, or maybe looking back at, did I set any resolutions? How are they going? Taking stock and maybe reassessing what you want to do. So that is why we're talking about that today. I like this analogy of a sat nav, right, for kind of what we're talking about today. So many of us have these in our cars, or maybe you use Google Maps or some kind of app or device or something like that to tell you where you're going. I probably rely on them quite heavily. I'm a big fan of Google Maps just to tell me where I'm going and what's the traffic like and everything like that. If I was just going for, a random drive just to drive around and kind of clear my head, this doesn't really do much for me, because, I need to know where I'm going, right? I need to have a destination in mind for this to be useful. So first of all, we need to know where we're going. We need to kind of define the end goal. What does that look like? But then, I suppose I've had this experience, and I'm sure lots of other people have, have you ever put the destination in, and then maybe you start driving along and you kind of switch onto autopilot, and maybe you realize, oh, I actually missed a turn a while back, or maybe, oh, I'm driving to work just again on autopilot, even though that's not where I'm going. So why does that happen? Well, this sat nav was telling us where to go, but we weren't paying attention to it. So again, it's great to have a goal. It's great to have that end point in mind, but focusing on getting there requires a level of attention and intention. So again, the device can tell us where to go, but if we're not paying attention to it, it's not much use. So that's kind of the analogy that I like to use, in life, in business. It's great. We need to define our purpose, sort of begin with the end in mind. But once we have that, we also need to consciously pay attention to it. Because again, if we don't, we might end up losing our way, or it might take a bit longer than needed. We might go down a more unproductive route if we don't pay attention to the goals and set those little milestones. And how do we know that we're making progress towards the goal? So I was thinking for today, we would start with those, first of all, how to set goals, and then talking about, well, why aren't we achieving them? What gets in the way? So we'll start off, as I say, talking about how to set a goal. Has anyone ever come across or used or seen a project charter before? Maybe just, again, pop a Y into the chat if you've ever used or developed a project charter before? Okay, so I can see a few people coming in saying yes. If you've ever done any kind of project management, or if you're involved with lean, you probably have used a project charter before. I can see a couple of people, some have and some haven't. For those who haven't, a project charter, it's like a living document. So you establish at the start, what's going to be addressed, who's going to address it. And part of it is building that goal statement. So a good goal statement identifies what you're aiming to achieve, how you will measure the change. It's not about the method for achieving the goal, but it's just about what the goal is, right? So it doesn't include how you're going to achieve the goal, but it says what you are trying to achieve. So I want to show you a couple of examples of some goals, and we can have a think about, do we think they're good, bad, maybe okay, maybe need a bit of work. So again, you can use the chat, or if you want to unmute yourselves, you can feel free and let me know what you think. So for this first one, the goal is improve customer retention. Do we think it's good, bad, or okay? Maybe just pop into the chat what you think. Good or bad, or just okay, maybe needs work. So improve customer retention. Okay, so yeah, a couple of people saying it's fine, needs a bit of work. Yeah, so far no one's saying, yeah, that's a great goal. I think I'd agree with you. It's probably a good place to start, but it's not finished. It's not complete. It's a lot of people saying needs a bit of improvement, because it doesn't really tell us a whole lot. It doesn't say what customer retention is currently like. We don't say what it's going to be. So yeah, I think it needs a bit of work. What do you think of this second goal? So a different one. Again, you can let me know in the chat. Do you think it's good or bad or okay? Again, needs work. So this one, roll out the employee retention program to enhance employee motivation company-wide by the end of the first quarter this year. Okay, so what do you think of this one? Is it great? Is it bad? Is it just somewhere in the middle? Maybe needs a bit of work. Okay, so again, some people saying it's okay, needs a bit of work. Yeah, needs to be a bit clearer. So yeah, some people are saying, okay, this needs a bit of work. Yeah, Sandra, that's okay. It definitely is, I think, better than the last one. It's it's a bit more specific. And yeah, exactly. So Tina, like you're saying in the chat as well, needs a bit to be a bit more specific. And I think another element there, again, it's great that it's time-based, it's a bit more specific, but you'll notice as well, it says rollout of the employee retention program to enhance employee motivation. So it's kind of giving us the solution. The solution is predetermined. And typically in our goal statements, we don't really want to predefine the solution, because then it's not quite our goal statement. So yeah, I think I'd agree with a lot of you in the chat then. And what about this third one? Decrease defects from the current 35% to 15% by the end of the second quarter this year. What do you think of that? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it okay? Yeah, okay, so great one, good. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, a lot of people saying that this one much more improved. People are thinking it is a good goal statement. And again, I would agree with a lot of you, because it's quite clear, it's specific. There is a measurement included. It's time bound. The solution isn't predetermined. It appears to be relevant as well to business's success, right? Because why would we set a goal that doesn't really matter? Defects obviously has a role to play in how well our business is performing. So it seems to be an important goal. And we can also hope and assume or presume that the goal is attainable as well, that we're not setting this on the 28th of June with the second quarter ending on the 30th. We have enough time. It's realistic as well. So I think that this third goal, it really kind of captures that SMART framework, which I would imagine a lot of people have come across before. It's just a useful little acronym for helping you to really define what exactly you're trying to achieve. So it's specific in that, you know, it's detailed. The focus is a bit narrow. You know, it's not like saying I want to get fit this year, right? You know, that's too generic or general. Measurable, again, you know, that it's possible to quantifiably track your progress. Again, you need to be able to have evidence to say I'm making progress towards what I want to achieve. Making something attainable and achievable. Again, it should be challenging but possible to achieve. It should be relevant. Again, it should align with your long-term objectives, you know, your values. Asking yourself, well, why am I trying to achieve this goal? That piece actually just reminds me, I was having dinner with my family recently. So it was my parents and my younger sister, and my sister was asking me about the gym, and she was like, how often do you go? And I was like, oh, about 4 times a week. And she was like, oh, okay, cool. I should go to the gym. And my dad was like, there's no shoulds in this house. You know, you either will or you won't. Which is it? And she goes, I won't. I was like, okay, perfect. But like, you know, there's no ambiguity. But it just made me think of that because, you know, that should at the start of the sentence, you know, it kind of signifies that it's probably someone else's goal. You know, maybe it's important to someone else. So again, making it relevant, making sure you're clear on why you're doing it, what's the relevance. And then time-based. So again, setting a realistic but ambitious end date. So that'll allow you to prioritize your tasks and ensure that you're continuing to motivate yourself towards it. So again, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that, but it might just be a little reminder. Something else that I'm going to share, and Andre will just pop a link to the resources folder that we have. He'll just pop that into the chat shortly. I've put up this Excel template, and it's a goal statement builder. So that'll be available to you if you want a bit of a hand or a bit of help with developing these kinds of goals. So with this, you just put in, like you can see in this example, right? You're okay. What's the verb? You know, what are you measuring? What was the starting point? What is the target end point? And then the formula will kind of come out and give you that goal statement. So I wanted to share that with everyone just so that, again, whether you're setting those personal goals or the more business related goals, that you have this as a guideline. So Andre's just popped that into the chat, so thank you for that. So I've gone through, you know, a bit about the goal setting, and again, I'm sure for a lot of us, like, that's not brand new. You know, we've all probably set goals at some point or another, but then it's just that question of, well, you know, why don't we all achieve our goals all the time? If we know how to set these goals, what gets in the way, right? And so I'd be curious to ask all of you, if you have any suggestions, feel free to pop them into the chat, or you can feel free to unmute yourself either. You know, what gets in the way? What gets in your way of, you know, you have a goal in mind, maybe it takes longer to get there than you would like, or maybe, you know, it's a goal that you've set and keep reminding yourself of it, but never quite fully get there. What gets in the way? What kind of obstacles? Yeah, so Sophie, fear of failure. Yeah, definitely a huge one. You know, what's that saying, that is it perfection is the enemy of good or the enemy of done? So it's that fear that, well, what if I dive into this and then I get it wrong? So that can stop us from starting anything. Yeah, and Matthias kind of thinking, okay, what if, and what would others think? You know, so those thoughts that might get in the way of, oh, what about what others are thinking? Is this, you know, we're very inclined to, you know, be geared towards, well, what do other people think of what I'm doing? Time constraints, Sandra. Yeah, exactly. A lot of people feel there's just so much to do, and, you know, only a certain amount of hours in the day to get them done. Ken, yeah, saying different jobs getting in the way of this goal. Again, all those different competing demands. External factors and changes. Yeah, definitely own, you've set the goal and you set the plan, and then, something comes in the way and just throws that all up in the air. Another person saying fear of failure and the costs and the risks. Exactly. Like, we do have to do those risk assessments. Like, obviously we have a fear of failure. We have a fear of it going terribly wrong. And sometimes that can be a valid fear, sometimes it is a big risk, and might be financially or might be otherwise. Procrastination. Yeah, very, very common. And yeah, Ronan, that's a good point. Trying to set our goals in a vacuum, and not factoring in like, okay, I'm going to eat really healthily. Okay, well now I'm, invited out for dinner and for drinks and for, and that gets in the way then. And we kind of went, well, if I can just, exist in a vacuum or a bubble, I can achieve my goals. But yeah, life gets in the way. Exactly. So thank you for sharing those, everyone. Oh yeah, and just adding to the Ronan, your point, you were saying, not changing ours to keep up with other people, losing focus because competitors announce a shiny new thing. Yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of these, it ties in with our emotions, like there's the fear, there's excitement, okay, I'm going to jump on the next thing. There's, yeah, a lot of those different feelings coming in and getting in the way. So I came up with a list as well based on what I often hear people saying, and I think a lot of those align with what all of you have mentioned. So that lack of time or resources that we mentioned, sometimes that feeling of a lack of knowledge, don't know where to start or don't know how to achieve the goal. Another one would be just trying to rely on willpower, right? So just kind of staring down temptation and trying to just override that. Procrastination, as we mentioned, and then fear. Again, fear of failure, fear of what other people think, all of those kind of ones. So if I just pop a poll, which of those 5 that I've listed, or other is another option, which would you say would be your biggest one? So I'll just pop that poll up there. You can vote on that just so I can get a sense of what kinds of obstacles are the most prevalent for different people. So I'll just leave that running for a minute and you can feel free to answer. It's an anonymous poll, so we won't see who said what. I'll leave that going just for a second. So yeah, so that first one that we mentioned there, of the lack of time or resources, people often say, okay, I don't have time for that. It'd be nice, but I just don't have the time. And sometimes when I feel like that, I kind of remind myself, well, imagine if I was, in an office in work and I got a call to say, oh, your house is flooded and you need to come and sort this out and there's no one else who can do it. You wouldn't say, oh, I'm really busy, I don't have time. You would just immediately, that would become a priority. And obviously that's a kind of, an anomaly or an emergency. But it's just a little reminder that, well, you have time and you're spending time doing something. But it's then just coming down to, well, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? I'm just going to pop the results of the poll up. So again, this one came out as one of the biggest ones, this feeling that you don't have enough time or resources to achieve your goals. 46% of people said that that's a big obstacle for them. 46% also said procrastination. So those are kind of the top 2. 38% said fear, 8% said relying on willpower, and another 8% said other. So again, that might have come through in the chat as well. So those kind of seem to be the main ones. So thank you for answering that. So with this lack of time or resources, one of the useful things, as I say, you can ask yourself, okay, well, if I'm saying yes to this, what am I saying no to? This time matrix, again, I'd say a lot of people have probably come across it in the past, because it is quite a popular tool. For anyone who hasn't, you see these Q1 is the urgent and important. So those are the real kind of emergencies or impending deadlines that you need to meet. Q2 is it's not urgent, but it is important. So those are those really valuable activities that sometimes get pushed down the list, right? So it's preventing a problem or planning, making improvements, relationship building, recreation, finding new opportunities, all of those things, they are important, but they're not as urgent. Q3 then, that's where, you know, certain phone calls and emails and meetings will fall into. Maybe they are urgent, but they're not quite that important. They might disrupt your day or kind of distract you. And they can sometimes be a result of poor planning of items Q1 and Q2. And then Q4 is the more trivial things. They don't tend to cause stress because they're not time sensitive goals. Again, some emails might fall into this, maybe social media might fall into that. And they can often be removed or reduced from your day. I'll talk a little bit about how to remove those in a little while as well. But if you were going to use this time matrix, you would start, I suppose, by listing the things that you need to complete. Again, brief, clear statements, include the deadlines, build in time as well, just for distractions or interruptions. And as Ronan said, you're not existing in a vacuum. You know, there will be some interruptions and you do need breaks as well. So, you know, don't try and schedule things back to back. But you're identifying your most urgent tasks, organizing them then by importance. So what are the things that I absolutely have to get done first? You're placing the tasks in the correct quadrant. So again, Q1 to Q4, which is what's important, what's urgent. And then you're working through your day. And then at the end of the day, coming back and assessing your productivity. So I would really recommend, you know, doing this for even a short time every day, say 10 minutes before you start work, and then weekly. So say, for example, half an hour. So like what I find is useful is kind of say, if I start work at 9 o'clock, I might come on at 10 to 9 and just do this bit of planning. And then as well, again, assuming you work Monday to Friday, it might be useful to put in half an hour on Friday afternoon to look ahead and say, okay, what are my most important, urgent tasks? And then how can I build in time for the Q2 activities as well? And putting them into the calendar to ensure that you do take the time out to plan what you need to get done. And I find this really nice, you know, to have done on, say, the Friday, because then, you know, when it comes to Sunday evening, you're not thinking, oh God, what do I have to do on Monday? Or, you know, it's not taking up that space in your brain. So I think that can be a really, you know, helpful way to help you be a bit more productive, just even taking those 5 minutes or 10 minutes to get really clear on, okay, what is the most important. And I think that last step as well is really important, the assessing, okay, is this working? What's getting in my way? How is my productivity? So again, I think sometimes people kind of, you know, we know this, but it's just actually building in this as a habit and as a practice. So when it comes to that challenge of, you know, not feeling you have enough time or resources, I think that the planning each week before the week begins can be really valuable. And once you've got that in place, you can then be in a better place to ask yourself, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? Right. So before you know, quickly respond to an email or before you quickly respond to a query, it's reminding yourself that, well, hang on, have I put first things first? You know, have I achieved the most important thing yet? If not, then this can probably wait. So it's I think once we have that written down very clear in front of us, it's a little bit easier to, you know, prioritize and say no to the things that aren't, maybe they're easy and maybe they're more pleasant tasks, but we sometimes need to say no to them in favor of getting the more important things done. So that is that first obstacle that often comes in the way. A second one then is that feeling of maybe not knowing what what to do or how to start. And sometimes I think this ties in with that idea of imposter syndrome. Again, I'd say a lot of people have probably come across this term. It's where you feel like you're a fraud, or your achievements are undeserved, or you don't really know what you're doing, you don't have a right to be in the role that you are, feeling like an imposter. And when we experience that, we can really doubt ourselves. It can be quite debilitating. We can find that we're, trying to maybe work really hard to compensate, to try and prove to other people that, that we are good enough, and prove to ourselves. But I think what can be valuable, so obviously imposter syndrome can be quite debilitating, can hold us back. But I think what can be useful then instead is thinking of these as, more so imposter moments. Because if we kind of say, yeah, I have this gap in my knowledge, but I have confidence in myself as a learner, then that completely changes it. Because rather than us say, I don't know how to start, I don't have enough confidence to begin, by saying, I don't know how to start, but I know that I can learn something. So it can be starting with a Google search, or starting with a brief chat with someone who may have some information, or may not. Maybe you just want to bounce ideas off. You just never know what's going to come out of a conversation. So it's having this mindset of, I have confidence in my ability as a learner. I can be flexible, I can be humble, I can be curious. That will help you to overcome this lack of knowledge and stop it from becoming an obstacle that completely stops you. The example I really like of this is the founder of Spanx. Now a 100 million or multi-million dollar company, global company. The founder of it said that she didn't really know about how to be an entrepreneur, how to create a product, how to, she didn't know much about fashion, she didn't know much about retail, didn't know about patenting laws. There was so many gaps in her knowledge, that I would imagine could have stopped many other people from achieving those goals. You might say, look, I don't know enough, therefore I can't achieve this goal. But she kind of said, I have confidence in my ability to learn. I don't know these things, but I believe I can figure them out. So I think sometimes that imposter mindset can be really useful to, fueling achievements. I'm just looking at the comments there. So Matthias, you were saying the time aspect is also about focusing on what you can control. Yeah, exactly. If you focus too much on time and only that, it can backfire and destroy relationships in business. Yeah, definitely. So many times I see good relationships being ruined because one of the parts is not patient. They expect things to happen straight away. Not accepting things outside of other parties' control may mean it takes time. Yeah, I definitely would agree with that, Matthias. I think that like relationship building and that it takes time. And if there's that element of kind of impatience, then you probably won't put in the time and effort required. And Ronan, I like that. Did you find her time got stretched? Yes, I think so. Yes, I think definitely referring to the founder of Spanx. I think so. So I suppose I just wanted to touch on that obstacle that kind of gets in people's way a little bit. And just in terms of reminders there, bringing in that word yet. So rather than I don't know, you can say I don't know yet. Just transforms it to mean with a bit of time and effort, I will get there. And again, creating your confidence in your ability as a learner. So being a learn it all rather than a do it all. So again, as I say, the starting point can literally just be a Google search or a very quick chat with someone. So again, it's believing that you can expand the knowledge and not letting those gaps in your knowledge get in the way too much. So moving on to the third one then was, something that I think people try and do with certain goals is just really relying on willpower. And we don't tend to have a huge amount of willpower. I think some people differ, some people seem to be really, they just seem to have more willpower than others. But I would say that it's there's only so much of it, right? Because it takes a lot of energy and effort. So as soon as we get tired, as we inevitably will, and that willpower starts to drain, we're not going to be able to stay on track towards our goals. And again, I think this really ties in probably with goals like maybe the slightly more personal goals, maybe like, around fitness and health. People talk about like wanting to cut down on their social media usage. My goal or my suggestions here would be, don't just stare down temptation and hope that you can kind of overcome it. Try to just remove the temptation as much as possible. So if you're using social media and you want to cut down on it, delete the apps. If you're trying to, like, say, for example, if you're people who are aspiring writers or authors, they'll block time off in their calendar for writing, and they treat it as if it is an important meeting in which they can't be disturbed. So again, it's really creating this time or space or whatever you need to try and remove any of the temptations that will get in your way. So the, I suppose, top tip for this one is, rather than exposing yourself to those temptations and hoping that we have the willpower to resist it, it's better to avoid confronting them in the first place. So trying to change the situation. So as I mentioned, taking away the temptation or the cues, not buying the sweets that you don't want to eat and having them in the house, all of those kind of things. So trying to get those out of the way. And also social influence can be a big one here. Who you spend time with can have a really positive or negative impact on your life and on your goals. So say, for example, people with addiction problems, they often need to make new relationships or hang out with different people who are supportive of their recovery journey, because if they stayed around the same people as those that, helped them kind of develop the addiction problem, then that is much more likely to continue. People who, say if you want to read more, you might join a book club. If you want to exercise more, you might join a running club or get a personal trainer. When you want to, achieve your goal, it really helps if you feel like there's someone counting on you to achieve it. So the kind of social norms play a really huge influence. Researchers actually tested this. They were figuring out how to reduce students multitasking during lectures, because it's quite unhelpful for learning. We don't learn well when we're doing two things at once. And so in one version of a course, the teacher showed students evidence that multitasking reduced learning. And so they tried to then establish the social norm of not using technology. Okay, so in one class, they really said, okay, this is what we do as a class. We don't use technology while we're learning in a lecture. And then in another version of the same course, the teacher provided the same evidence, and they had the students create a personal plan for not using technology in class. Okay, so one version had the social norms, one version had this personal plan, and the norms trumped the personal plan. So those who had the independent personal plan, they reported spending about 24% of their time multitasking, whereas students in a course with the clear social norm against using technology spent only about 10% of their time multitasking. Okay, so who you're around and what they are doing has a really big influence on what you are doing and how you feel. So it's worth bearing in mind, is it worth kind of getting someone else involved, or adjusting who you spend time with. So moving on then to the fourth main obstacle that we identified, procrastination. So again, a big percentage of people reported that they found this to be a big obstacle for them. So I think in order to tackle it, like, again, it's probably something that most people have experience with, and maybe they procrastinate a bit more than they like. I think one of the important things to think about is, well, why do we do this? Because a common misconception that I'd often hear is that people think that they are lazy if they procrastinate. Often it's not really the case, because, often when we're procrastinating on something, we might do things that actually require a lot of energy or effort. It might be tidying and cleaning, or it could be doing a different work task that's a bit more enjoyable. So it's not so much about avoiding work as it is about avoiding feelings, right? So avoiding feelings like a lack of confidence or anxiety, or we mentioned fear of failure, or just feelings of boredom, insecurity, confusion. So when we're faced with tasks that don't give us a huge amount of autonomy, maybe they lack structure, or they're a bit ambiguous, those are the ones that we tend to be more likely to procrastinate on. So I think even just recognizing those triggers is a big first step, so that you can then put things in place to overcome it. So recognizing that we're trying to avoid feelings, we're trying to avoid these negative feelings. And I think another way of kind of reframing it a little bit is, saying that procrastinators, those people who, if you're one of those yourself, if you're like, I'm just a chronic procrastinator, even trying to reframe that and saying, okay, I'm a pressure prompted person. I really work well under pressure. A deadline is the thing that prompts me to perform at my best. So again, knowing that can help you sort of own it and recognize, okay, what helps me perform at my best and what helps me, or what causes me to procrastinate. So being aware of both of those triggers is a really valuable kind of first step. In terms of procrastination as well, I quite like this quote saying every first draft is perfect because all a first draft has to do is exist. I think again, sometimes when we have these big goals, or they seem like it's going to take up a lot of time. I don't know where to begin. Again, it can stop us from taking the very, very first step. So I always really like this quote to just remind us that, anything, just starting somewhere is a valuable first step. You can throw away the first draft. And that's similar to what Margaret Atwood would say as well. She's the author of The Handmaid's Tale. And she says, go ahead, say something. It may be the wrong thing, but you can throw that out and no one will ever read your dumb thing. So she said she procrastinated for about 3 years before writing The Handmaid's Tale. And I think, it makes sense. Like I've included 2 quotes there from authors. I think writing something, creating something from nothing, it is very ambiguous. No one can tell you what comes next. And we don't like that feeling of just going into the unknown. So yeah, we often really avoid it. So I'd say that writing is something that really can be prone to, be a task that we procrastinate on quite a bit. Just going to the chat there, Matthias, I like you were saying there about the people that you spend time with, and you'd like to add that if you want to achieve something, spend time with people that have been through what you'd like to achieve. Yeah, that's a really good point. So again, if you kind of maybe admire someone, or you can see that they're doing what you want to do. So let's see, Norwegian footballer, struggle with different addictions, receive support from former Arsenal captain Tony Adams that also struggled with addiction in the past. Yeah. So again, like if you have that, especially like say those 2 people being footballers, they probably had those similar shared experiences. And then, yeah, I think that's a really good point of saying, okay, this person has achieved what I want to achieve. I can see myself in them. I can see similarities between us. So yeah, I think that's a really good point to add there. So around the procrastination, I'd say one of the things, as we mentioned there, is kind of name it, claim it, and reframe it a little bit. So become self-aware. Procrastinators saying that you're work well under pressure, you work well to a deadline. That's totally fine. Not criticizing yourself for it. Claim it and kind of saying, yeah, that's who I am. That's how I work well. And then maybe reframing it a little bit. So again, as we're saying, making it more of a positive thing and, proactively setting the deadlines, like the second one says. Find a colleague that can help you hold yourself accountable to that, or find someone that can be like, I'm relying on you to, do this by this deadline, and making the deadline not the actual deadline, giving yourself that bit of time, and yeah, kind of maybe sometimes artificially setting a deadline, because if you work well to a deadline, you need to have that deadline then. Excuse me. The third point there is just to actually try and relieve the guilt that you might be feeling, because as we said, excuse me, as we said, procrastinating is about avoiding negative feelings. So if you're making it worse by criticizing yourself and chastising yourself for not getting something done, it's probably creating more of a vicious cycle. So reminding yourself, this is totally normal. Everyone does it at some point. It's just part of the human condition. So it's kind of being kind to yourself, but also then accepting responsibility and realizing that, I have control here. I'm trying to avoid negative emotions, which is very natural. And then, going from there and kind of, as we say, setting the deadlines and aiming to achieve things. So, yeah, I think that's one that's people sometimes kind of say, well, no, like if I'm kind of being soft on myself or being really kind to myself, it'll make me weaker or less likely to accomplish things. But there's actually a lot of research that would suggest otherwise. So I would say a little bit of kindness and compassion towards yourself can actually go a long way in terms of motivating yourself, as opposed to criticizing yourself, making yourself feel bad. It's probably more likely to just encourage and encourage the procrastination. I am just looking at the chat there, and I love when people are popping in their thoughts as they come to them. That's always nice to read. So Ronan, you were saying you read someone with an interesting take on priorities, and it's sort of being a sort of fallacy. We beat ourselves up about not achieving them. There is only one priority, following that as a second, then a third one. I'm not saying it's a perfect point, but it helped my mindset. The unneeded negativity. Yeah, so exactly. It's, once we set a priority, it starts to become this all important, all encompassing thing. And it's, beating yourself up over not achieving them. Yeah, probably doesn't really help. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. There's a coffee infused word salad, but I hope it makes sense. Yeah, I think it does, Ronan. Brilliant. So that's a bit on procrastination. And then that last one that we mentioned was fear. Fear of what other people think, or what fear of failure. I think it ties in closely with procrastination. If we're afraid of doing something wrong, or of looking stupid, or of failing, we will put it off. So it really ties in with procrastination. So I'd say the first step then is, that noticing it. What signs are actually showing you that you're afraid, and actually naming it as fear is a big one. Kind of acknowledging that you're fearful. I think there's a lot of talk as well about, feel the fear and do it anyway. And I think that can be really valuable for the most part. But I would say, it's not just about blindly ignoring fear. Fear is a really important emotion, and it keeps us safe. And sometimes we do need to stay safe. So it's not just about going, yeah, I'm really afraid, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and I'm not going to really adequately assess the risks that I'm facing. I think it's recognizing where the fear is coming from, and then making a choice as to whether that's a good enough reason or a big enough threat. Because sometimes, like we mentioned, we have fear of what other people think of us. And at the end of the day, does that really matter? Is that a good enough reason? And, you might decide, for me at the moment, yes, it is. Or you might say, no, I'm not going to let, Deirdre down the road influence my goals? I don't actually care what she thinks, but there's a natural tendency to go, oh, but what if someone sees me fail? What if I look stupid? So it's recognizing that there may be that natural tendency, but it might not always be helpful. And reminding yourself as well that fear is that sign that we're about to go out of the comfort zone. And that is where learning and improvement takes place. So those uncomfortable experiences are where development is happening. I think that sometimes as well, we kind of feel like I need to have confidence in order to tackle my fears and in order to achieve big goals or the difficult thing. But it's definitely the other way around, I would say. It's, if we don't have confidence, that means we're going into something, the unknown. And once we achieve those difficult challenges, that will build up our confidence. So rather than the other way around, like you need to have confidence in order to achieve the goals, I'm saying once you achieve the goals, you'll have more confidence. So yes, there is that element of the feel the fear and do it anyway. But yeah, naming it and acknowledging it rather than just blindly going into something that's fearful or causing you to be fearful. So what I like here is an activity. And I think you can do this in your own time. You get a pen and paper. And at the top of the page, you just write, if I knew I could not fail, I would. And you just set a timer for 3 minutes and try to just write nonstop. And if you don't know what to say, just keep writing, I don't know what to say, until thoughts start flowing again. So the idea is really to get this stream of consciousness going. So it's about just seeing what comes out. If there's, and when you're writing this, you can bear in mind that no one's going to read it. Spelling and grammar doesn't matter in this activity. You can just let the kind of thoughts and feelings flow and just see what comes out. And again, it doesn't mean you have to act on anything that you've written, but it can be a useful one just to help you kind of acknowledge what's getting in the way, what kind of fears are getting in the way. Thank you, Sandra, by the way, for joining. Just saw your message there. So once you've got that, and again, like this can be done on your own, or you can do it in, say, coaching with you can work with a coach or work with a mentor or someone like that. Something as well that I like to do with some clients is, trying to figure out, okay, if a goal is on the other side of fear, we can start exploring it by, kind of going, okay, what if I did the thing that I fear? Listing the benefits of a partial success or just an attempt. So a benefit might be, okay, I'll build my confidence, I'll develop a skill. And then listing the cost of inaction as well, physically, emotionally, financially. We're more geared towards focusing on what's the cost or what's the risk. So making that really explicit, like, well, if I don't take action, here is what the cost will be in 6 months or 12 months or 24 months. So that kind of is a quick, as I say, there's so many different obstacles and things that can get in our way. I think these ones come up a lot, just in kind of conversations with people. So we have that lack of time or resources. So it's about maybe using the time matrix, planning for the important but not urgent, as well as the urgent and important, trying to minimize and be conscious of the time wasters. Lack of knowledge, being a learn-it-all rather than a know-it-all. Relying on willpower, avoiding temptation and getting social support are some ways of doing that there. So again, coaching or mentoring, or bearing in mind of the people you are spending time with. Procrastination, we said about recognizing that you're trying to avoid negative feelings. So don't make it worse by calling yourself lazy. Recognize that maybe you are pressure prompted, and then put a bit of pressure on and give yourself a deadline. And then fear, recognizing that fear is natural. Sometimes it's good. It sometimes shows that you're learning and doing something new. It can be a sign of progress, but also recognizing that it's not always helpful. And so asking yourself, well, what is the worst that can happen and what is the cost of inaction? So as I'm going through those, if there's any goals that come to mind that you feel you're kind of struggling with, or you're finding hard to actually set a goal and figure out how you want to achieve it, feel free to drop me a message and I'll be happy to chat through any of this further as well. So just as we kind of come towards the end, I'd like to invite you just to maybe jot down, what is one goal that you would like to achieve in the next 6 months? And you can choose to put something into the chat, or you can choose to just write it down on a piece of paper beside you. And from today, what is one small step that you are going to commit to taking? So again, it could be to have a look at that Excel template that I'm sharing, the goal statement builder. It could be to find a group that encourages you to achieve your goals. I was talking to Andre just before this call started about how I just joined a book club. So I'm kind of looking forward to the kind of social element of reading more and discussing books. But yeah, just have a little think, what is a goal that you would like to achieve? No running. I didn't say foot club. I said book club. Don't know what a foot club would involve, but apologies for not being clear enough. Books. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to reading a little bit more. But yeah, and I'm just having a quick look at the chat, and I can see some people are talking about that 5 whys as to writing your thoughts, really kind of interrogating the thoughts a little bit. So yeah, Ronan, I really like that suggestion. It says I'm going to put up the Cork notice board on the wall. It's had it on my floor near my desk. Help me to visualize the intentions better. Yeah, I think having a visual prompt is so important. One of those like reminders, because again, making it just really, really clear and obvious. So yeah, I think that's a great one. So as I say, you can have a little think, what's one small step, like similar to Ronan? It could be a really small, I'm just going to put something up beside my desk, help me to visualize things. But jot it down for yourself. What's one small step you're going to commit to taking? Again, you can write it down for yourself, or you can share it in the chat if you think it might be helpful for other people to see. So just before we wrap up for the day, I just want to let people know that we have our next session on the 1st of March. This is about the triple bottom line. So we're talking about sustainable business models. The triple bottom line being people, planet, and profit. We're going to be discussing that on the 1st of March. So hopefully you can join us for that. Andre will put the link to that in the chat as well. And as always, you can scan this QR code to get a link, just basically bring you to all the useful links. We have a LinkedIn group, we're on Eventbrite, you can join the mailing list so that you're kept in the loop about all of that as well. So I am going to hang on for another few minutes. I think we're not quite at 12 just yet, so I'm happy to have a bit of a chat with anyone that would like to. But for anyone who does want to drop off now, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again at the next one. Thanks, everyone.